your dawn.
Lift up your eyes and look about you. All assemble and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are carried on the hip.
Then you will look and be radiant. Your heart will throb and swell with joy.
The wealth of the seas will be brought to you. To you the riches of the nations will come.
Let's continue worshiping.
Today's reading will be from the book of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 1 through 23. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went to their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said. "Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and lived in the town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. I'd like to take this moment to do something to bring joy. I told you she was going to sneak in, and Joanne sure did sneak in when she thought she was safe.
Hey, wait, she's 70 years old.
Oh,
You're older than I am.
Oh, I don't believe that now. So if you all will join me. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Joanne. Happy birthday to you.
Well, that was well done, buddy. In fact, just so much of what you do here is well done. Last Sunday night, Kathy and I were watching something on TV. I don't know what it was. I don't remember now. And the phone rang, and it was your superintendent and my longtime friend Jessica Terrell. And she said, "Well, how did it go?" I said, "I couldn't have expected it to go any better." I bragged on it. And the nice thing about it was, William, I didn't have to make a thing up. I just told him how it was. Now, I've been doing this now for 2.5. Oh, by the way, you want me to turn this on, don't you? Have you got the mic on? Now you have it? Now you do. I think. Well, because I don't want somebody to go online and they miss the introduction. We all right now? All right. I've been doing this now for 2.5 years since I retired, gone to big churches, gone to little churches. So, you know, I was going to a church for about 3 months and preached there. There were 5 people in need. One person gets sick, 20% attendance drop for that Sunday. I've been all over the conference. And I've never gone into a church in the last 2.5 years where I felt more comfortable and where I felt people were more competent in what they were doing and committed in terms of leading the worship. It's remarkable, the team you all have. And I don't have to say that if I didn't want to, and I'm saying it because it's true. And they make it really is. If most of these people behind me on Sundays are going to be sick, just call me and warn me, and I'll see if I still want to come. I appreciate the being included in the offertory prayer. And originally, the idea was that I would stay here through Easter. And Jessica said, well, is that all you can give me? I said, well, I think I can give you some more. So I'm here till annual conference. Like it or not, Cindy, I am what you got till annual conference. There are a couple of Sundays, you can understand this since we're retired, there are a couple of Sundays that we already have things booked. And I'll be away, but Jessica will have someone very fine here to preach. Now, it's been quite a week. It's been quite a week weather-wise. It's been quite a week internationally. All this mess in the Middle East, crowned by the loss of so many lives when the Ukrainian airliner was accidentally shot down. Just by coincidence, that night, Kathy and I watched a movie on Netflix. I don't know if you've heard about it or not. The name of the movie is The Two Popes, which doesn't sound like a really exciting thing to watch, but it's an absolutely fantastic movie. Nominated for Best Picture by the Golden Globe people, and Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce were nominated for as Best Actor and Supporting Actor. It is riveting. And what it is, it's a story of when Pope Benedict, he became too feeble in body, and he felt feeble in mind to continue as Pope. And he did something that no Pope had done in centuries. He retired. And the point of this movie is, he ended up picking, hoping that the cardinal that he least liked, the cardinal who he wouldn't have minded if this cardinal had fallen off the face of the earth, that cardinal came up to see the Pope and to turn in his letter of resignation. And it's a story of their several days together. And in the end, Pope Benedict says, you know, I didn't retire because I was afraid they would vote for you to be the next Pope. But now God has worked on both of us, and I can retire because I know you're the man who should follow me. It's a remarkable story. Okay? Now, that's the day that the Ukrainian plane was downed, and then I watched this about Pope Francis, and I just happened to remember then something that happened that involved Ukraine and Pope Francis in January of 2014. Pope Francis had just recently been consecrated, and he went out on that porch, you know, that porch they have in Vatican City, and he had 2 children standing beside him. And he addressed the crowd, the thousands in St. Peter's Square. His sermon was a call for peace in Ukraine. In Ukraine. Where anti-government protests had turned deadly. And so when the Pope finished speaking, these 2 children released doves. Each one had a white dove, and they released those 2 white doves of peace. Now, what nobody had bargained on was a seagull and a large black crow who didn't get the Pope's message about peace. And as the doves took flight, the gull and the crow dive-bombed them. Now you can go look at it on video online. Turning the Sunday service into an aerial dogfight. And the crowd gasped as one dove broke free from its seagull attacker and lost some feathers in the process, but it seemed to get away. Nobody to this day knows what happened to it for sure. The other dove was less fortunate. It was repeatedly pecked at by the crow until both the crow and the second dove disappeared among the pillars and porticos of Vatican City. And nobody knows the fate of that dove either. Well, the internet exploded. You can imagine. With various comments and interpretations of the incident. Some said, well, this is a sign of bad things to come in the Ukraine. And others said, well, this is a bad omen for the new Pope. And here's what I think it was. I think it was simply a reminder that there have always been predators in the world. There have always been predators in the world. The innocent suffer. The brutal flex their muscles, the way King Herod did, for instance. To this day, we know him as Herod the Great. Now, that was not that's not the assessment of the historians, the judgment of history. He was called that by his subjects, who figured it would be a good thing if they called him that. If they called him great, I mean. Because Herod was ruthless. Herod was paranoid. He was not the least bit concerned about doing what was kind and right. Primary example is Herod murdered several members of his own family, including his wife, because he thought they were a threat to his throne. So when some prestigious visitors knocked on the palace door and announced that they traveled from the far corners of the world to worship the newborn King of the Jews, it was like tossing a lighted match into a gasoline can. Herod was so upset that he plotted a scheme on the spot to locate and destroy this latest threat to his throne. He, you know the expression, he played the wise men like a cheap violin. Well, when you find the child, do me the favor of coming back and telling me where I can find him. Mean, destructive people often have that way about them. Come tell me so that I can go there too and worship him. Well, the wise men followed their star. You know the story of the manger where they bowed and worshiped. The song choice today was perfect describing what happened. They laid their gifts before the child, but they were tipped off in a dream to avoid Herod like the plague and to go home by a different route. Well, when Herod realized that the wise men weren't coming back, he was so furious that he committed one of the most horrendous crimes imaginable. He sent his hitman to destroy, to eliminate baby Jesus. Now, any boy in Bethlehem, given the calendar of all these events, any boy in Bethlehem 2 years old or younger might have been the one. The wise men showed up some period of time after the birth. So he said any boy 2 years or younger could be the one, so he said just kill them all. Kill them all. At Christmas we sing glory to the newborn King, and then Matthew hushes our singing with the sound of mothers and fathers weeping in Bethlehem. So why include this note, this story that's so out of pitch with the rest of the season? Well, it's there because Matthew was an honest man. Matthew refused to ignore violence and deceit, death and destruction, depression and oppression, or anything else that threatens to destroy peace in the world and peace in us. When Jesus was born, the evil powers of the earth greeted him with violent resistance. Don't ever forget that. When Jesus, the Son of God, was born, the world greeted the Son of God with violent resistance. As soon as Matthew's shown us the beautiful scene of the Magi worshiping the baby, he moves out into the larger world, the world of human corruption, the world over which this newborn king will rule. Jesus will have the power. But Herod will still be lurking around. One of my favorite poets, American poets, is Robinson Jeffers. And one of my favorite poems that he wrote includes this line. Talk about Christmas. He says, iron was the empire, brutal the time, dark was that first Christmas day. It was then, when things were out of joint and violence was everywhere, that God came in amongst us in the form of a baby. And not even Herod, with all his cunning, all his royal power, all the troops who carried out his terrible command, not even Herod and all of that could stop him from coming. You may remember that early in Matthew's account of the first Christmas, God tells Joseph in a dream to make the lonely decision of marrying a pregnant woman and raising a child that wasn't his. It takes a rare man to do that. Matthew says Joseph got up after the dream. He says Joseph got up, took Mary as his wife, and named the baby Jesus. Some 9 months later, God tells Joseph in another dream that Herod's soldiers are coming. And Matthew says again, so Joseph got up in the night, and he flees to Egypt with Mary and their child. Suzanne did a wonderful job bringing the wise men. They made their journey from the far parts of the world back there, Suzanne, and then up to here. And then I added this morning, you might have to come up here to see it, I added a porcelain figurine of Mary on a donkey holding the baby, Joseph with all their earthly belongings at that point in a satchel or sack over his shoulder, and Joseph is leading the donkey. That's the first Christmas present I ever gave Kathy 43 years ago. Bought her in the Christmas shop at Helen, before Helen got too commercialized. And there they are. I mean, you know, it's you begin with all this wonderful scene at the manger, and then the next thing you know, Mary and Joseph and the baby appear as tiny shadows. They're crossing the moonlit face of the desert. That's why I look at that every year after Christmas. If ever a situation seemed God-forsaken, that would have been it. A woman who's just given birth, an infant, a carpenter who's doing the best to protect his wife and child, leaving for a land they'd never been to. But Joseph got up and did it. Well, after weeks of travel, they reached ancient Cairo. In those days, Cairo had a large Jewish community and many synagogues. And they made their new home there. I imagine Joseph opened a carpenter shop. When Herod died several years later, God spoke to Joseph yet again in a dream. His third dream, in which God told him the Holy Family could return home safely. The plot against Jesus' life had failed. So they returned to Nazareth. And the simple truth is, if it weren't for Jesus, listen to me now, if it weren't for Jesus, few people anywhere would remember Herod at all. That's the only reason we remember him thousands of years later. Because of his interactions with Jesus. It is a strange way for the Christmas story to end, but I'm glad it happened that way, because something like that happens to you and to me, hot on the heels of Christmas, with all its celebration and sense that God's a little closer to us and a little more is right with the world. Right on the heels of that, you and I have to rush off into an Egypt of our own. We don't call it that. We call it the New Year. It's a place that we've never been to, just as much as Egypt was a place that Mary and Joseph had never been to. Like them, we don't have any choice about it. We got to go into it. Here we are. We can hope that somehow life in this new year will be good, that it will be a year when we finally achieve some of our personal goals, and maybe when we get the garage cleaned out. It's one my wife wants me to do. Maybe it's a year when we'll act like better neighbors, or we'll do more for people in need, or we'll exercise more control. Whatever it is that you're kind of hoping positive will happen in 2020. Some of that will likely happen, but we also know that 2020 will have its share of trouble and surprises. I mean, the events worldwide in the last couple of weeks and nationally. Like Joseph and Mary, some of us will have to change our plans. Some of us will have to reroute our itinerary. Some of us will have to make a life in a new place. None of us fully knows what life this year will be like. Pause, and I hope I don't get too personal when I say this. This is very applicable for this congregation. None of us really knows right now for sure what lies ahead, William. That's not clear yet. But we do know what 4 people would tell us. Now, if you're one of those who takes notes, and Joanne conveniently leaves room for that, these would be the 4 things I would hope you remember. Mary tells us when your plans get interrupted, that could be God's way of creating new life in and through you. If your plans get interrupted, that could be God's way of creating new life in and through you. When Chapel Hill's plans get interrupted, that could be God's way of creating new life in and through you. Now, I'm getting real close to you right now. If we don't believe that, let's just shut the doors after this service and go. If we don't believe that the sort of interruption that this church has had back here and financially and changing the pastors, if we don't believe that that could be God's way of creating new life in and through this church, I mean, we've got to hope that. What Joseph would tell us is this, and it's sort of the same. Joseph would say, keep your soul open to holy dreams. 3 times. Matthew says, God spoke to Joseph through a dream. Joseph says, keep your soul open to holy dreams and be willing to make decisions that keep the dream alive. He could have had the dreams, but if he turned over like I probably would have gotten a little more comfortable on the other side of the bed and fallen asleep, nothing would have come of those dreams. Keep your soul open to holy dreams. Be willing to make decisions that keep the dream alive. The shepherds would say, all this is based on their Christmas experiences. The shepherds would say, if you get the sense that God is breaking into your life unexpectedly, what happened to it? If you get the sense that God is breaking into your life, stop whatever you're doing, go wherever you need to go to discover that God is personally with you and with the world He loves. And the wise men would tell us, follow whatever light God gives you. Follow whatever light God gives you. Search diligently for Jesus. And once you've found and worshipped Him, be willing, oh gosh, it's right back to us, isn't it? Be willing to get on a different road if you need to. I mean, I don't say this with any secret knowledge. Mary, what lies ahead? I'm just trying to tell the story and see what God has in it for us. The wise men took a different route home, steering clear of Jerusalem, avoiding Herod. They literally took a different route. But they also took a different path. By which I mean their lives were changed. They were no longer dependent on rare and mysterious stars to guide their lives. Instead, they had seen God revealed in the Christ child. And that became the guiding force in their life. Whew, what a change. Now the question for today is, have we, like the wise men, been changed by what we experienced at Christmas? That's the challenge Matthew issues in his account. Are we willing to let God guide us? Are we willing to take a different path from the one we've been on? Or will the Herod in us, and there's a little bit of Herod in all of us, and there's a lot of Herod in some people. You probably know some people like that. Will the Herod in us, the one who wants to be in charge, the one that wants to make things his way and his way only, will the Herod in us keep us from following Jesus and living the way Jesus wants us to live? I love the music you all have here. I just love music in general. And one of our favorites, Kathy and I enjoy, is James Taylor. Any of y'all listen to James Taylor? We went to hear a concert at Chastain Park years ago. We would have enjoyed it if the people in the table behind us weren't drunk, but that's another story. James Taylor captured the gist of this part of the Christmas story in a song he wrote a few years ago, and I've tried to sing it, but the service is going along very nicely, and I don't want to change it, so I'll just read it to you. Those magic men, the Magi, some people call them wise or oriental, even kings. Well, anyway, those guys, they visited with Jesus. They sure enjoyed their stay. Then, warned in a dream of King Herod's scheme, they went home by another way. Yes, they went home by another way. Maybe me and you can be wise guys too and go home by another way. We can make it another way. Safe home, as they used to say. Keep a weather eye on the chart on high and go home by another way. Steer clear of royal welcomes. Avoid a big to-do. A king who would slaughter the innocents won't cut a deal for you. He really, really wants those presents. He'll comb your camel's fur until his boys announce they found trace amounts of your frankincense, gold, and myrrh. So they go home by another way. Home by another way. You have to figure God's saying, play the odds and go home by another way. We can make it another way. Safe home, as they used to say. Keep a weather eye to the chart on high and go home another way. Home is where they want you now. You can more or less assume that you'll be welcomed in the end. Mustn't let King Herod haunt you so, or fantasize his features when you're looking at a friend. Well, it pleases me to be here and to sing this song tonight. They tell me that life is a miracle, and I figure that they're right. But Herod's always out there. But Herod's always out there. He's got our cards on file. It's a lead pipe cinch. If we give an inch, old Herod likes to take a mile. It's best to go home by another way. Home by another way. We got this far on the lucky star, but tomorrow is another day. We can make it another way. Safe home, as they used to say. Keep a weather eye to the chart on high. And go home by another way. Go home by another way. Let us pray. Living and loving God, there are plenty of Herods, it seems, nearby, far away, but they're all over the place. We remember today that you are around every corner we turn, ready to help us deal with Herods and help us with our new beginnings. So help us feel your presence here and now so that we leave this place resolved to take some important step in our life. So that tomorrow will be better than today. And the day after that will be better than tomorrow. For you are the God of everything, and your name shall be praised forever and ever. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. And all of us said, Amen.